This book is especially for you, Oliver, because when your little baby brother is not happy, you like to make him happy. How do you do that? I know, you told me you like to tickle him. Oh, so this is a book called Mr. Tickle, and it's by Roger Hargreaves. It was a warm, sunny morning. In his small house at the other side of the wood, Mr. Tickle was asleep. You didn't know that there was such a thing as a tickle, did you? Well, there is. Tickles are small and round, and they have arms that stretch and stretch and stretch. Extraordinarily long arms. Mr. Tickle was fast asleep. He was having a dream. It must have been a very funny dream because it made him laugh out loud, and that woke him up. He sat up in bed, stretched his extraordinarily long arms, and yawned an enormous yawn. Mr. Tickle felt hungry. So do you know what he did? Maybe he went downstairs for cupcakes. Oh, no, he didn't. He reached out one of his extraordinarily long arms, opened the bedroom door, reached down the stairs, opened the kitchen door, reached into the kitchen cupboard, opened the biscuit tin, took out a biscuit, brought it back upstairs, in through the bedroom door, and back to Mr. Tickle in bed. He didn't even have to get out of bed, did he? As you can see, it's very useful indeed having arms as long as Mr. Tickle's. Mr. Tickle munched his biscuit. He looked out of the window. Today looks very much like a tickling day, he said. So, later that morning, after Mr. Tickle had made his bed and cooked his breakfast, he set off through the woods. As he walked along, he kept his eyes very wide open, looking for someone to tickle, looking for anybody to tickle. He might not have had a baby brother to tickle. Eventually, Mr. Tickle came to a school. There was nobody about. So, reaching up his extraordinarily long arms to a high window ledge, Mr. Tickle pulled himself up and peeped through the window. Oh, what do you think he saw inside the window? Inside, he could see a classroom. There were children sitting at their desks, and look, a teacher. He was writing on the blackboard. Mr. Tickle waited a minute and then reached in through the window. Mr. Tickle's extraordinary long arm went right up to the teacher, paused, and then tickled! The teacher jumped in the air and turned around very quickly to see who was there. But there was nobody there. Mr. Tickle grinned a mischievous grin. He waited another minute and then he tickled the teacher again. This time he kept on tickling, tickle, 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 until soon the teacher was laughing out loud and saying, stop it, over and over again. All the children were laughing too. It's such a funny sight. There was a terrible pandemonium. The kids all look happy, don't they? Eventually, Mr. Tickle thought he'd had enough fun, so he gave the teacher one last tickle for luck, and then he very quietly brought his arm back through the open window, chuckling to himself. He jumped down from the window, leaving the poor teacher to explain what it was all about, which, of course, he couldn't. Then Mr. Tickle went to town. And what a day Mr. Tickle had. He tickled the policeman who was on duty at the crossroads in the middle of town. It caused an enormous traffic jam. He tickled the greengrocer just as he was piling apples neatly in his shop window. The poor greengrocer fell over backwards and the apples rolled all over the shop. Look at the apples rolling everywhere. And then at the railway station, the guard was about to wave his flag for the train to leave. As he lifted his arm, lift your arm up into the air, Mr. Tickle, Mr. Tickle tickled him. And every time he tried to wave his flag, Mr. Tickle tickled him until the train was 10 minutes late. Leaving the station, it was 10 minutes late and all the passengers were furious. Oh dear. That day, Mr. Tickle tickled everybody. He tickled the doctor. Do you think this is the doctor maybe? He's got a bag with his doctor equipment in it. He tickled the butcher. He even tickled old Mr. Stamp, the postman, who dropped all his letters into a puddle. Oh no, all the letters got wet. Then Mr. Tickle went home. Look at him sitting there in his couch. Sitting in his armchair in his small house at the other side of the wood, he laughed and laughed every time he thought about all the people he had tickled. He thought it was a grand joke, didn't he? So, if you are in any way ticklish, beware of Mr. Tickle and those extraordinarily long arms of his. Just think, maybe he's somewhere about at this very moment while you're reading this book. Perhaps that extraordinarily long arm of his is already creeping up to the door of this room. Look around. Perhaps it's opening the door now and coming into the room. Perhaps before you know what's happening, you could be well and truly tickled. That's a good fun book, isn't it? Mr. Tickle.